Since they cancelled me, I've set up the Free Speech Union. We've fought over 4,500 cases.
Is Elon Musk a help or a hindrance to your cause?
I think, on balance, he's a help.
Back in the great woke wars of the early 21st century, are we over the worst of it?
I think things are pretty bleak in Europe, and particularly in the UK. I am a thorn in the side of the would-be censors because they chose to pick on the wrong guy, Harry.
As ever, free speech is under fire across the West, no more than in the United Kingdom, no more than in the United States, and across the mainland Europe. German political activist Naomi Seibt, nicknamed the Anti-Greta, is now seeking US asylum after claiming years of death threats of Antifa and begging the State Department to let her move to America. She says Elon Musk is privately backing her move across the Atlantic. So could we see a great rush of persecuted political figures in Europe, once again heading to the freedom of America to try and save them? And what a better guest to join me tonight, the Free Speech Union's founder, Lord Young, all the way from London. Lord Young, what are you doing in town? And can you believe we've got to a stage now where, you know, we've discussed at length the persecution of hate speech incidents and the like in London, but people are actively trying to flee the European continent for the land of liberty.
Yes, I think things are pretty bleak in Europe, and particularly in the UK. And I can think of a number of people who've been persecuted for exercising their right to free speech who, if the Anti-Greta is granted political asylum, might well be next in line.
Well, the administration have said that they're going to, this year they're going to allow 2,500 refugee status visas, but they're mostly going to be focusing on white South Africans fleeing persecution and Europeans for political reasons. That's the Trump administration having a little bit of a troll with the global left, though, isn't it?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, I think in the case of the South African refugees, I mean, I think their lives are genuinely endangered in contemporary South Africa. But yeah, I think if we can find someone in the UK, you know, a persecuted Christian preacher who's being prosecuted for misgendering a trans protester, facing jail time, someone like that, I think, you know, the Trump administration might well be interested, but I think primarily in order to troll Keir Starmer, to give someone asylum in the United States on human rights grounds, given that Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, is Mr. Human Rights, would be a fantastic piece of trolling.
Would you, I mean, so yeah, we've seen people arrested and potentially jailed for burning Qurans, for silently praying outside abortion clinics. These are all within the legislation of the United Kingdom. What are your American allies and the people you're seeing out here? Presumably you're here to, I don't know, shake the tin a little bit and raise the alarm. You must be pushing at an open door, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a great deal of concern in this city about the parlour state of free speech in the United Kingdom. They still see it as the mother country. They see our parliament as the mother of all parliaments. They see a great connection between America and Britain. So they're genuinely alarmed at stuff they see on social media. Police officers turning up on people's doorsteps because of hurty words on X.
Are they alarmed at the fact it's when Americans get dragged in, or people that live in America? We covered extensively the Graham Linehan case, when he was thankfully now dropped, where he made a joke on X about trans, and then he landed in London and was detained by 6 anti-terror cops. He lives in Arizona. He's suggesting he's going to claim asylum here. There was another Free Speech Union case that you raised about the American mother, who was, I think, a cancer sufferer, who'd, you know, put some quite fruity stuff on Facebook about Donald Trump. But again, had the cops feel collar. Is it just a concern about Americans in Europe and London, or is it a broader kind of, what the hell are you guys doing in a sort of loving friendship way, like as in, guys, come on?
I think there is the broad concern, which was articulated by the Vice President at the Munich Security Conference, in which he said, you know, you're our allies. If we're going to spend blood and treasure protecting you, defending you from your adversaries, we want to be assured that you share our values, that you're going to stand up for democratic norms like free speech. But I think the specific concerns, the things I'm asked most about by politicians and officials here, is, are US citizens, are their rights in danger in the United Kingdom? Are US citizens who travel to... I say, I mean, it's, you know, as you said, Graham Linehan was arrested when he arrived at Heathrow off a flight from the United States. He's not a British citizen, and it may well be that the things he was arrested for saying on X, he said whilst resident in the US. So it's not out of the question that a US citizen, on arriving at Heathrow, could be arrested by armed police officers for something they've tweeted or posted on Facebook in the United States. So there's a certain amount of concern about that. There's concern about the overreach of Ofcom in the course of enforcing the Online Safety Act, going after American tech companies like Rumble, 4chan. We're meeting tomorrow with the lawyer, Preston Byrne, who's representing those companies, fighting back against Ofcom. But I think there's real concern that the rights of US tech companies on US soil may be encroached upon by a British regulator.
On that point, just for our listeners and viewers who might not be following every sort of cough and spit of that particular debate, Ofcom, the regulator of the internet, the broadcast regulator in the UK, now has more and more powers to police the internet content. They seem to be arguing around the world, and sort of the libertarian-leaning aspects of the internet are saying, over our dead bodies. 249 years ago, we threw some tea in harbour about this. You don't get to tell us what to do anymore. It kind of makes Britain look, in my view, from where I'm sitting. I mean, we've talked at length before about the first thing anyone says to you in this town is when they hear your accent is, what the hell's going on in England? And this is a long litany of things that come up. But doesn't Britain just make itself look impotent and completely out of touch with the world and the way the world works, when we send sniffy little letters from Quango in Westminster to some of the most successful tech firms in the world saying, I don't believe you wanted to do that.
Ofcom is an analog regulator in a digital world. I mean, they claim that they have jurisdiction.
That's Madonna song, isn't it?
Could be. But they claim they have jurisdiction over companies like Rumble.
On what grounds?
Because we can access their content in the UK, but you can access it anywhere in the world. They're not UK-based companies. They really shouldn't be trying to enforce British rules made by the British Parliament on US companies on US soil.
On the flip side, though, you've got people like Elon Musk, who, obviously, this German woman, and to be fair, her views are pretty kooky. She's not on the delicate side of the debate in Germany. You've got Elon Musk funding her visas. He's funding Tommy Robinson's legal actions. He's very close to people like Rupert Lowe, the guy that got kicked out of Reform. Is Elon Musk a sort of help or a hindrance to the cause of freedom and free speech in the UK? Obviously, since he bought X, he has been a free speech maximalist in terms of what can be published on there. But also, it is a bit of a sewer these days when you log on to that website. The algorithms, I think, are slightly balked, to put it lightly. He is obviously meddling in domestic politics in the European continent and in Britain. On the ledger of all that, when he raises things like grooming gangs and suddenly after 15 years the British government goes, yeah, Christ, you know what, we do actually need to address this. Is Elon Musk a help or a hindrance to your cause?
I think on balance, he's a help. And the reason I say that is because until he bought Twitter, now X, Twitter was the main enforcement mechanism for
cancel culture
for woke orthodoxy. If you deviated from woke orthodoxy, if you challenged radical progressive ideology, you would be piled on Twitter. Twitter would remove you, ban you. Twitter back then was sort of like Blue Sky is now. It was a kind of
I can safely say I've never been on.
Well, never been there either, but sorry here. But the fact that he has opened it up, robbed the kind of woke left of that weapon to enforce their ideology on everyone else. That's been, I think, incredibly helpful. And I think it's one of the reasons that the kind of Berlin Wall of cancel culture is beginning to crumble. It's crumbled here, but it's beginning to crumble now in the UK
But
as well.
At the same time, you've also seen a massive rise at the same time in anti-Semitism and child pornography on X, on all sorts of foul things. We were talking a lot throughout this programme about the sort of giving people, people whose views wouldn't be socially acceptable even in the right, not necessarily talking about, being cancelled from the left, has suddenly now been given this absolutely massive unfiltered platform.
I think I have to say, I do think that's exaggerated. And Elon Musk
You
himself
are a free speech maximalist.
I think he's bringing a lawsuit against various pro-censorship NGOs that have accused him of tolerating racism, anti-Semitism. I don't think there's any child pornography on X. And actually, what we're seeing in the UK now, because Ofcom is insisting that content which is only suitable for adults needs to be age-gated, Twitter are erring on the side of caution. X is erring on the side of caution. We saw Katie Lamb giving a speech in the House of Commons about the grooming gang. She's a Conservative member of Parliament. That was age-gated
because she
X.
said
They
rape.
You have to be 18.
Because she said the word rape in terms of the horrific crimes.
So if anything, X is now censoring too much content, rather than, presiding over a Wild West in the UK.
You didn't ask for this fight. You were kind of dragged into it. You got cancelled multiple times, as far as I can recall, back in the great woke wars of the early 21st century. Are we over the worst of it, or does never more than one owner from X away from a return to tyranny?
The battle's certainly not over. The Free Speech Union has won a number of good victories recently. You mentioned the Hamit Koskan case, the Turkish refugee who was prosecuted, convicted for burning a copy of the Quran outside the Turkish consulate. We managed to get that conviction overturned by the High Court. So now I think it'll be harder for people to be convicted of a crime for burning copies of the Quran. So we're winning a number of victories, but it's El Alamein, it's not D-Day. I mean, we have a war to fight, and every time you win, there's another kind of horde of orcs coming over the crest of the hill. You mentioned that I myself was cancelled. That's true. Quentin Tarantino was once asked what kind of man he wanted to be, and he said, I want to be the wrong guy, the guy in the action movies who's just a simple, law-abiding guy going about his business, picked on by the gang and turns into their worst nightmare. I want to be that guy. I mean, the guy the wrong guy to cancel. Since they cancelled me, I've set up the Free Speech Union. We've fought over 4,500 cases. We've won a succession of victories. I am a thorn in the side of the would-be censors because they chose to pick on the wrong guy, Harry.
Lord Young, I mean, we're definitely going to clip that bit up. Thank you for joining us on Save the West.